The first sign of the invasion was silence. Outpost 47, a remote research station on the edge of the Orion Arm, stopped transmitting. No distress signal, no emergency beacon, just an abrupt and chilling absence. The United Terran Federation, UTF, dispatched a recon fleet to investigate, but what they found was worse than any nightmare. The station was gone. Not destroyed, not abandoned, gone. In its place drifted a cloud of shattered debris, fragments of hull plating fused into grotesque organic shapes. The crew had vanished without a trace. Before the recon team could report their findings, the HFY arrived. They descended upon humanity's outer colonies in numbers beyond comprehension. Their ships, vast and grotesque, moved like living nightmares. Twisting masses of bone-like armor and pulsating flesh, their hulls shifting as if breathing. Where human vessels relied on metal and engines, HFY warships seemed grown, their weapons not manufactured but birthed. And when they attacked, they did so with cruel efficiency. On the colony world of Epsilon Prime, the sky turned red as the first wave struck. Massive psionic lances, bright as dying stars, cut through orbital defenses in a single sweep. Energy shields flickered and collapsed. Human warships scrambled to respond, unleashing missile barrages and railgun fire, but their weapons barely scratched the monstrous vessels. The HFY struck back, raking their enemies with energy beams that melted hulls and shattered steel. The UTF fleet, outmatched and overwhelmed, was torn apart in minutes. On the ground, it was worse. The HFY did not simply kill, they harvested. Their ground forces descended in chidness dropships, their soldiers resembling towering insectoids with razor-edged limbs and glowing, predatory eyes. They moved with an eerie coordination, their psionic minds linked into a single, unstoppable force. Civilians fled in terror, but there was no escape. Where human soldiers fought, they fought bravely, but bravery was not enough. Plasma rifles burned through enemy ranks, tanks rolled through the streets firing heavy cannons, but the HFY adapted. Their bodies regenerated from wounds that should have been fatal. Their warriors fought with unnatural speed and precision. One by one, cities fell. Within 72 hours, Epsilon Prime was lost. The news sent shockwaves through humanity. Entire fleets were mobilized, soldiers drafted, defenses reinforced. But it didn't matter. The HFY didn't slow down. They struck again and again and again. World after world burned under their assault. Refugee ships clogged the hyperlanes, carrying the few survivors lucky enough to escape. The UTF struggled to mount a defense, but the HFY were unlike any enemy humanity had ever faced. They weren't just more advanced, they were more evolved. At the heart of the chaos, Earth remained untouched, but not for long. The HFY weren't just invading, they were exterminating. And humanity was running out of time. The United Terran Federation was crumbling. Every battle against the HFY ended the same way. Total human defeat. UTF warships, designed for conventional warfare, were nothing more than target practice for the enemy's advanced psionic weapons. Energy shielding, the pride of human engineering, collapsed like wet paper under the sheer force of the HFY barrages. The remaining fleets were in disarray, struggling to protect the core worlds while refugees swarmed toward Earth in desperate hope of safety. But safety was an illusion. The War Council was formed in humanity's darkest hour, a desperate assembly of military leaders, engineers, and scientists. At its head was Admiral Elias Voss, a man known as much for his brilliance as for his cold ruthlessness. He had no illusions about the situation. Humanity could not match the HFY in speed, agility, or energy technology. They couldn't build ships with psionic shielding or bioorganic armor. Every standard military doctrine had failed. So Voss proposed something radical. If we can't outmatch them, he said, we outlast them. For centuries, humanity had obsessed over speed and maneuverability. trying to match alien navies in elegant dogfights and precision strikes. That era was over. What Voss envisioned was something different, something monstrous. And so the shipyards of Mars and Titan roared to life, their forges burning with new purpose. Engineers worked around the clock, tearing apart old designs and forging something completely new. Instead of sleek, nimble cruisers, they built warships thick with layered plating, their hulls meters deep in reinforced titanium alloys. Instead of fragile energy shields, they relied on pure density, slabs of armor so thick that even the most devastating Selfar beams would struggle to burn through them. Weapons were overhauled as well. Humanity had always used kinetic weapons, but now they were everything. Railguns the size of skyscrapers lined these new warships, designed to hurl tungsten slugs at near-relativistic speeds. Nuclear missile silos were embedded deep within the armor, their payloads capable of turning entire enemy formations into radioactive clouds. Experimental weaponry, kinetic harpoons, gravity mines, and superheated plasma lances were rushed into production. The philosophy was simple: if they cannot destroy us, we will grind them into dust. The first prototypes were tested in the asteroid belt. The results were terrifying. These new warships, hulking, unrelenting, could take direct hits that would have vaporized a standard UTF cruiser. Even with half their hulls torn apart, they kept firing. They were slow, but they did not die. The press called them ironclads. The soldiers called them bricks. The War Council called them the Iron Fleet. And just in time, scouts reported that the XL-FAR Armada was regrouping. The next attack would not be on an outer colony. It would not be on some distant world. Their next target was Earth, and when they came, they would not find a broken people waiting for death. They would find war. The XL-FAR did not expect resistance. For months, they had crushed humanity beneath their heel, tearing through colonies and fleets with ease. To them, the war was already won. Earth was a prize waiting to be claimed, its defenders nothing more than the last embers of a dying species. The XL-FAR commanders viewed this next attack as routine, a final extermination before they moved on to new conquests. But when they emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, they found something they had never encountered before: a fleet that did not run. The Iron Fleet awaited them. The XL-FAR, expecting another desperate human defense, wasted no time in attacking. Their warships surged forward, sleek and grotesque, their psionic cannons glowing with deadly energy. They fired first, unleashing massive lances of searing power. Normally, this would have been the end. Human shields would have collapsed, hulls would have melted, and another fleet would have been lost in seconds. But this time, the beams struck solid iron. The Iron Fleet absorbed the attack like an immovable wall. The thick, reinforced plating of the new warships blackened and warped under the assault, but it did not break. There were no explosions, no catastrophic chain reactions, just scorched metal and the unshaken resolve of humanity. Then the humans returned fire. Railguns the size of buildings thundered to life, launching hyper-accelerated tungsten slugs at incredible speeds. The kinetic rounds punched through the void, shattering XL-FAR warships on impact. Some enemy vessels were torn in half instantly, their organic hulls unable to withstand the sheer force. Others crumbled under sustained fire, their regenerative abilities overwhelmed by the relentless bombardment. Missiles followed, streaking through space like fiery comets. Each carried a nuclear payload designed for maximum devastation. The XL-FAR, accustomed to vaporizing enemy projectiles with psionic defenses, discovered too late that these warheads were buried under layers of kinetic shielding. They struck their targets with terrifying accuracy, detonating in blinding bursts that ripped entire enemy formations apart. For the first time, the XL-FAR hesitated. Humanity had never fought like this before. Their ships were slow, their formations rigid, but they did not fall. They took hit after hit, shrugging off damage that would have obliterated any other fleet. Even when an Iron Fleet warship suffered catastrophic damage, it kept fighting, railguns firing even as flames engulfed its decks. Some warships, their engines disabled, simply drifted forward, becoming massive battering rams that crushed enemy ships under their sheer bulk. The battle raged for hours. Then, something unthinkable happened. The HFY retreated. The once invincible conquerors, the nightmare that had burned human worlds to ash, had turned tail and fled. Their invasion was halted, their forces broken. For the first time since the war began, humanity had struck back and won. It was not a decisive victory. The cost was high. Dozens of Iron Fleet warships were left crippled, thousands of human lives lost. But it did not matter. Because today, humanity had proven something to the galaxy. They were not prey. They were hunters. The HFY were furious. Their first real defeat at the hands of humanity had shaken them, but it had not broken them. If anything, it had enraged them. No lesser species had ever repelled a HFY assault, let alone forced them into retreat. The humiliation was unbearable. The Dominion would not tolerate such defiance. And so, they returned. This time, not with an invasion force, but an armada. Hundreds of HFY warships emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system, their numbers blotting out the stars. They came with one purpose: to burn Earth to cinders and erase humanity from existence. The HFY believed this would be their final campaign, a swift and merciless extermination. But Earth had been waiting. In the weeks since the first counterattack, the United Terran Federation had turned the entire Sol system into a fortress. The orbital stations around Mars, Titan, and Europa had been refitted into weapons platforms. The asteroid belt had been seeded with kinetic mines, automated railgun turrets, and hidden missile silos. The moon bristled with planetary defense cannons, each capable of hurling nuclear warheads across the void. And above Earth itself, the Iron Fleet stood ready, its warships forming an unbreakable line. The moment the HFY entered firing range, the sky ignited. The battle began with a coordinated strike. Thousands of mines detonated at once, sending waves of hyper-accelerated shrapnel through the enemy's formations. HFY ships reeled, their organic hulls shredded by relentless kinetic bombardments. Before they could recover, the orbital defenses opened fire. Railguns thundered, launching tungsten slugs at near-relativistic speeds. Superheated plasma beams lanced through the void. Missile barrages streaked through the chaos, each carrying enough firepower to level a city. The HFY pressed forward, undeterred. Their warships retaliated with devastating psionic lances, cutting through space like burning spears. Human defense platforms shattered under the assault, their crews dying in flashes of fire and light. But for every human structure that fell, a dozen enemy vessels followed. Then the Iron Fleet charged. Unlike past battles, humanity did not fight defensively. The Iron Fleet did not maneuver, did not scatter, did not break formation. It pushed forward. HFY warships, built for speed and precision, found themselves unable to maneuver past the relentless advance of the massive human dreadnoughts. The Iron Fleet took every hit, every psionic blast, and kept moving. They forced the enemy into close-range combat, where kinetic weapons reigned supreme. Some human warships, crippled beyond repair, activated their final protocol. Ramming speed. The HFY, unaccustomed to enemies who refused to die, were horrified as entire human battleships plowed into them, tearing through their living hulls in suicidal fury. For every Iron Fleet warship destroyed, 10 HFY vessels fell. For every human life lost, 1,000 HFY perished. The siege lasted for weeks. The battle raged in space, on Mars, on the Moon. Every inch of Sol system became a war zone. But in the end, when the last HFY dreadnought crumbled and the remaining invaders fled, humanity still stood. Earth did not fall. The Iron Fleet had held the line. The siege of Terra had ended in victory, but the cost had been staggering. Hundreds of Iron Fleet warships lay crippled or destroyed, their hulls scarred and broken from relentless battle. The asteroid belt, once a silent expanse of rock and dust, was now a graveyard of twisted metal and debris. Millions of soldiers and civilians had perished, and entire cities on Mars and Luna had been reduced to rubble. But humanity had survived. And that meant the war was far from over. The HFY had underestimated humanity once, but they would not make the same mistake again. Reports from Deep Space Intelligence confirmed their next move. The HFY Dominion was preparing another assault, larger than before. They were bringing their full might this time, an invasion force so vast it could blot out entire star systems. The War Council knew that even with the Iron Fleet's strength, Earth could not withstand another siege of that scale. Survival was no longer enough. It was time to strike back. For months, in the hidden shipyards of the Kuiper Belt and beyond the orbit of Neptune, humanity had been working on something new, something even more terrifying than the Iron Fleet. It had been a desperate gamble, classified at the highest levels, known only as Project Juggernaut. And now, it was ready. The Juggernaut-class dreadnoughts were unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Each one was a fortress in space, kilometers long, with armor so thick that no known weapon could breach it in a single blow. Their hulls were designed to endure catastrophic damage. Entire sections could be destroyed and sealed off. Yet the ship would keep fighting. Their weapons were nothing short of apocalyptic. The spinal-mounted rail cannons could fire rounds the size of skyscrapers, each impact equivalent to a meteor strike. Experimental gravity lances could tear enemy ships apart by sheer force, while kinetic harpoons allowed them to grapple HFY warships, dragging them close for point-blank annihilation. Missile silos carried nuclear payloads designed for planetary bombardment, capable of wiping out entire fleets in a single barrage. The Juggernauts were not ships. They were harbingers of destruction. As the HFY Armada moved toward Sol for their final attack, the Juggernauts emerged from the depths of space. Their sheer size and brutalist design sent shockwaves of fear through the enemy ranks. The HFY, who had believed humanity's strength had already peaked, suddenly realized the truth. They had only seen the beginning. The counterattack began. The Juggernauts led the charge, tearing through HFY formations like titanic war gods. Railgun slugs the size of buildings shattered enemy dreadnoughts with a single shot. Harpoons pierced living hulls, dragging enemy ships into point-blank nuclear fire. The HFY fleet, once so confident in their superiority, crumbled under the merciless onslaught. The galaxy watched in awe and horror. The war had changed. Now, humanity was the nightmare. The galaxy trembled. For centuries, the HFY had ruled as an unstoppable force, carving their empire across the stars with brutal efficiency. No species had ever defied them and survived. No civilization had ever pushed them back. The idea of their defeat was unthinkable. Until now. The United Terran Federation had turned the tide of war, and the HFY were reeling. Their fleets, once invincible, were shattered. Their warlords, once arrogant, were now desperate, and as their forces retreated into the depths of space, humanity refused to stop. The War Council had made its decision. This war would not end with a truce. It would end with the HFY Dominion in ruins. With the Iron Fleet leading the charge and the new Juggernaut-class dreadnoughts acting as the spearhead, humanity launched its most daring campaign yet, a direct assault on the HFY homeworld, Zurich Prime. It was an audacious strategy, one bordering on madness. Zurich Prime was the heart of the Dominion, a fortress world protected by the largest fleet in HFY history. Its orbital defenses had never been breached. Its planetary shields had never been penetrated. The HFY believed it to be untouchable. But humanity had defied the impossible before. The assault began with a deception. UTF forces launched diversionary attacks across the Dominion, striking key outposts and shipyards. The HFY scrambled to respond, moving their remaining fleets to defend scattered locations. Then, when the Dominion's forces were spread thin, the true attack commenced. The Iron Fleet and Juggernaut dreadnoughts emerged from hyperspace above Zurich Prime in a formation designed for total annihilation. No pretense of diplomacy, no demands for surrender, only vengeance. The XL-FAR defenders fought with desperation, but they were no longer facing a fragile species struggling to survive. They were facing the unbreakable might of humanity. Massive railgun slugs pounded planetary shields with relentless fury, each impact sending shockwaves across the surface. Missile barrages darkened the sky, raining nuclear fire upon enemy strongholds. The Juggernauts led the charge, unstoppable behemoths tearing through XL-FAR defenses with sheer brute force. Even as the Dominion's last fleets arrived to defend their home, they found themselves outmatched. Humanity's warships, battle-hardened and reinforced from countless engagements, refused to fall. They endured every blow, every psionic assault, and kept advancing. The XL-FAR, for the first time in their history, felt something they had never known: terror. As the planetary shields flickered and collapsed, the final phase began. UTF ground forces, enhanced with the latest mechanized wargear, descended upon the surface. Titans of steel, massive war mechs armed with rail cannons and plasma lances, marched through XL-FAR cities, leveling them with impunity. Infantry, hardened by years of brutal warfare, carved through alien resistance, refusing to retreat even in the face of overwhelming odds. The XL-FAR leadership, realizing their end had come, attempted to flee. They never made it off-world. Humanity had not come to negotiate. They had come to end the war. And as the banners of Earth were planted in the burning ruins of Zurich Prime, one truth became clear: the XL-FAR Dominion had fallen. Zurich Prime burned. The once mighty capital of the XL-FAR Dominion, a world that had ruled the stars for centuries, was now a graveyard of fire and ruin. Its towering citadels lay in shattered heaps, its sprawling cities reduced to glowing embers. The very ground trembled under the weight of human war machines as they secured the final strongholds. The war was over. Humanity had won. But victory had come at a terrible cost. Even as the last XL-FAR warlords fell, the battered remnants of the Iron Fleet hung in orbit, their hulls scared and broken from relentless battle. Some ships had taken so much damage that they would never move again, forever drifting as silent tombs for the brave souls who had given everything. The casualties were staggering. Millions of soldiers had perished, entire fleets had been wiped out, and the core worlds of the United Terran Federation were scared beyond recognition. The sacrifices made to bring down the XL-FAR Dominion could never be undone. And yet, for the first time in history, humanity stood as a galactic power. In the days following the battle, Admiral Elias Voss addressed what remained of the War Council. He was no longer the cold, calculating strategist who had once spoken of survival at any cost. He had seen too much death, carried too many names on his conscience. His voice, once commanding, was now weary. "We did not fight this war for conquest," he said, his words transmitted across the Federation. "We did not seek power. We fought because we had no choice. Because that XL-FAR came to wipe us out, to burn our worlds and erase our people. They believed we would break." He looked around at the men and women who had survived, at the soldiers who had followed him through hell and back. They were wrong. The galaxy had watched the war unfold with bated breath. Many alien civilizations had expected humanity to fall, to be snuffed out like so many before them. Now those same civilizations hesitated, uncertain of what came next. Would the victors become conquerors? Would humanity, having tasted war, seek vengeance against those who had once turned their backs on them? But humanity was not the XL-FAR. Instead of an empire built on domination, humanity extended a hand. Where the XL-FAR had ruled with fear, humanity offered alliances. They sent engineers to rebuild shattered colonies, soldiers to protect newly freed worlds. They forged treaties, not chains. And so the unthinkable happened. Former enemies became allies. Those who had once cowered before the HFY now turned to humanity for leadership. The war had changed everything. The Iron Fleet had proven that humanity could not only survive, but endure. That they were not weak. That when pushed to the brink, they would fight until the very end. And now, as the embers of war cooled, the galaxy finally understood one undeniable truth. Humanity had earned its place among the stars. The war was over, but the galaxy would never be the same. Across the ruins of the HFY Dominion, silence had replaced the once deafening drums of conquest. Their homeworld, Zurich Prime, lay in ashes, a stark reminder of what happened to those who underestimated humanity's resolve. Their fleets were gone, their warlords dead. What few survivors remained had either flowed into deep space or surrendered, too broken to continue the fight. But humanity did not linger in the ruins of their enemy. Even as the last battle ended, Earth and its allies turned toward the future. The United Terran Federation had won a war that should have ended them. And now they faced a different challenge. What came next? In the halls of the newly formed Galactic Concord, representatives from dozens of species gathered. Some had fought beside humanity in the final days of the war, recognizing their unbreakable spirit. Others had once served under the HFY, now seeking a new order in a universe without their former masters. All eyes turned to humanity, waiting to see what kind of rulers they would become. But humanity did not claim dominion. Instead of taking the HFY's place as tyrants, they offered unity. They did not demand tribute. They did not impose rule by force. They shared their technology, their strategies, their vision for a future where no species would suffer the same fate Earth had nearly faced. They called for alliances, for cooperation, for a galactic defense force to ensure that no empire would ever again attempt to exterminate another species. And the galaxy listened. The Iron Fleet, once a desperate shield against annihilation, became the foundation of the Terran Defense Initiative, a coalition of species united to protect against future threats. Humanity's engineers, hardened by war, helped rebuild devastated worlds. Where the HFY had left only fear and destruction, humanity offered hope. Yet, even in this time of peace, the warriors of Earth did not forget the lessons of war. The Juggernaut-class dreadnoughts remained in active service, patrolling the stars as a silent warning to any who would threaten the fragile peace. Humanity would never seek conquest, but neither would they ever be caught unprepared again. Standing on the bridge of the UNS Indomitable, the flagship of the fleet, Admiral Elias Voss gazed at the vastness of space. The stars stretched before him, full of possibility. He had led humanity through its darkest hour, had seen the cost of survival, had borne the weight of impossible decisions. And now, as the last echoes of war faded into history, he allowed himself a moment of peace. Humanity had been tested in fire. They had bled, suffered, and endured. And in the end, they had risen, not as conquerors, not as tyrants, but as the guardians of a new age. A new era had begun, and humanity was ready.